Really exciting video on trade and tariff negotiations because there's a lot going on. And quite frankly, this is the best investigative reporting, fact-based interview I've seen in a long time. And I give this lady from CNN all the credit in the world for really asking some neat questions. And of course, for her guest, providing detailed answers to her questions. So it's a really fact-based interview. You may want to grab a pen and paper because there comes a point in time where they start rattling off names and countries. It's kind of tough to follow. Grab a pen and paper, or by all means, you can refer back to the videos oftentimes as you would like. But first, let's talk about and let's listen to the progress that the Trump administration has made on the auto trade and tariff negotiations. Take a listen.
One big focus, of course, Kevin, is this question about auto tariffs as well. And there has been an order in the works. Of course, the president going to Michigan today. Has the president signed the order on auto tariffs?
Yes, and in fact, I got an update on this, and so perhaps I'm breaking a little bit of news, but I wanted to know for sure that the executive orders were signed while he was traveling to Michigan. Of course, signing them on the way to Michigan is in part what he's up to, because it's all about getting workers back to work in the places where we make things in America. And so, yes, the two executive orders on autos were signed. I was informed. I don't think I was informed incorrectly by someone on Air Force One.
And this next clip is just going to provide a little bit more information on the auto industry trade tariff negotiations directly from Donald Trump. Here you go.
Tell us about your decision on the auto tariffs. We just wanted to help them during this little transition, short term. And during this little, if they can't get parts, it has to do with a very small percentage. If they can't get parts, we didn't want to penalize them. And you have a 1 year period, and then they have an extra year, but it's for a very, very small part of the car. And basically, they're paying 25%.
And now moving on to China. So the negotiations between the U.S. and China are happening. Just have to remember, China is not the U.S. We take for granted the free speech we have in this country, but not all countries are like that, and China certainly is not. So China is not communicating externally what they're talking about with the U.S., and quite frankly, nobody should be surprised about that. Xi has to be very careful with what he does as far as communicating, negotiating trade deals and tariff deals with the U.S., because he does not want to project weakness to people in his country that may want to depose him. So I just caution everybody to just understand China is not the U.S. We are negotiating with China on trade and tariffs. Listen to some of the details. Here you go.
So this obviously, all of the activity on tariffs has particularly focused as well on China, because the volume of goods that come from China is so high. There have been serious questions about the way that talks are continuing between the U.S. and China, because, of course, the Chinese have denied speaking to U.S. officials. And let's kind of go through this a little bit layer by layer. Has the president spoken with President Xi of China about this?
The president is clear that he's talked with President Xi, but what those conversations might entail, obviously that's up to the president and President Xi to reveal. But I can say that the president has asked Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent to lead the trade negotiations with China. As the top economic official, as the Treasury Secretary is, the heir to Alexander Hamilton, he's exactly the right person for this job, and we're looking forward to making progress and reporting on progress soon.
Has the Treasury Secretary spoken with his counterpart, his Chinese counterpart, recently?
The Treasury Secretary will inform you about those matters in the fullness of time.
And now this next part goes pretty quickly. This is where I was saying earlier, grab a pen and paper, because what you're about to listen to are multiple secretaries within the administration that are working on different trade and tariff negotiations with different countries or different regions. It could be India, it could be China, it could be our other Asian partners. It could be specifically related to national security related parts. So just take a listen, grab a pen and paper if you need to, or just refer back to the video. Here we go.
Okay. Can you give us shed any light on officials that you may have spoken with in your role? And can you really clarify for us, you say that Bessent is doing at China. Do you know the list of other countries in his portfolio as compared to Howard Lutnick, who, of course, has been talking about what we think is this deal with India and what you may be involved in? There's a little bit of a lack of clarity on who's doing what.
Okay, so first I'll make it clear that as director of the National Economic Council, I'm not engaged actively in negotiations because that's what Secretary Bessent, Secretary Lutnick, and Jameson Greer are doing. That's what the president has assigned them to do, and he's allocated the jobs amongst them in a way that some of the things are public and some of them are not public. But Jameson Greer has gotten 19, I believe, written offers on the reciprocal tariffs. Secretary Lutnick is working really, really hard on the 232 tariffs, which are the ones for national security, and Secretary Bessent is working with our Asian counterparts and making an enormous amount of progress, all of them. And the trade team is 100% behind the president's policies, and I'm there, but I'm not an active negotiator.
So pardon my nostalgia, I'll just call it that, or my excitement. The reality is these trade and tariff negotiations are definitely happening. Tariffs are working, if for no other reason than they're bringing different countries around the world to the table to figure out trade deals. And that's really part of the point of the tariffs, is to encourage communication and better trade deals for the U.S. It's also designed to bring manufacturing back home to this country, again, referencing back to what's going on with the auto industry and parts and trying to bring work back to the U.S., manufacturing back to the U.S., rebuild the middle class. It's just incredibly exciting for me because this is the first time in my lifetime that I've ever seen or heard an administration working this hard on so many different trade deals to the betterment of the U.S. It's absolutely amazing. In the past, going back, I don't care how many presidencies you want to go back, trade just happened. And quite frankly, we were on the short end of those deals. If they put tariffs on our product, we just kind of lived with it and dealt with it and went along to get along or got along to get along. And that's just different now. That's gone on for too long, and we just need to do a reset. So this reset with the renegotiation of trade deals, which is part of the whole tariff strategy, is amazing to listen to. It's truly once in a lifetime for me. So bear with me for being so excited about it. But I guarantee you, we're going to look back, 4 years from now, decades from now, and just marvel at the amount of work and coordination that's being done to try to renegotiate better trade deals, to try to bring manufacturing back to this country. It's working. It's really exciting. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Want to see more like this, by all means, subscribe. Know anybody who may be interested, then definitely share it with them. And always, until next time, God bless. Love you all.